Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Unity Code, where we explore the spaces in between science and spirit, the seen and unseen, and everything that connects us in between. I'm Nicole, and today we are venturing into one of my favorite crossroads where psychic ability meets government research. Yes, actual government research, and where metaphysics cross paths with military intelligence. Today, we are diving into remote viewing, a structured psychic-based method that was tested, studied, and funded by the U.S. government for over 2 decades. We'll explore what it is, how it worked, what researchers discovered in one absolutely jaw-dropping experiment involving Jupiter, and how this practice continues today. Through it all, I'll invite you to reflect on your own intuitive experiences because the same principles that guided those early viewers can help you sharpen your perception too. Let's get started with remote viewing. It is a structured psychic process, a way of perceiving information about a person, a place, or an event hidden from your physical view. So what does it feel like to do remote viewing? I want you to imagine yourself sitting in a quiet room and being handed a piece of paper with numbers on it. They're asking you to describe what you perceive without any photo, any clues, without any evidence, just pure perception. And so you will tune into your awareness like a radio dial and see what you can uncover in initial impressions such as shapes, emotions, sounds, textures, or even feelings that pop up in your energy field. And the key here is to jot down anything that you perceive fast before your brain or your logic has time to interfere with it. And this is not imagination or guessing, as most people would, I think, expect. It's actually intentional, trained perception. And this is all possible based on the premise that consciousness can perceive information beyond space and time, or what researchers call non-local perception. And this idea has fascinated scientists and mystics alike, whether consciousness can really access information beyond our ordinary sensory channels, beyond our sense of sight and sound and smell. Nobody claimed to prove it beyond a doubt, but the data was so strong that it kept researchers and eventually the U.S. intelligence community paying attention. And so let's rewind back to the early 1970s. The Cold War was at its peak, and the US and the Soviet Union were both desperate for any possible advantage. When reports surfaced that the Soviets were studying psychic phenomena, including telepathy, psychokinesis, and ESP espionage, the CIA did what any self-respecting intelligence agency would do. They decided to test it too. So in 1972, a small secret project began at the Stanford Research Institute, the SRI, in California. Physicists Russell Targe and Harold Puthoff were chosen to run it. Here's the thing, they weren't mystics, they were laser physicists, but their approach was simple. They wanted to test, measure, and replicate. They brought in Ingo Swann, Pat Price, and later Joe Monagle. That's a mouthful. Sorry, Joe, if I pronounced your name wrong. People with reputations for extraordinary perception. Targets were chosen at randomly and sealed. The viewers had absolutely no idea what they were describing. And afterwards, independent judges compared their sketches and notes with the actual targets. Across hundreds of trials, something was clearly happening. There were too many hits to write off as coincidence. And yes, people call us crazy for meditating, intuition, psychic work, but 50 years ago, this was literally a line item on the CIA's budget. And now I want to shift gears to talk about the experiment that when I read about it made my jaw drop, and it still to this day makes every researcher's jaw drop. And it is the remote viewing experiment about Jupiter. In 1973, so this was a year after they established this program and before any spacecraft had reached Jupiter, Ingo Swann was asked to describe the planet using remote viewing. The idea was to compare what he perceived in this session to data that NASA would later pick up as part of the Pioneer 10 probe. So he was there in 1973, sitting in a quiet monitored room at SRI, and he focused his mental target of Jupiter. And what he reported was a massive gaseous atmosphere dominated by hydrogen, bands of colors swirling in motion, tremendous magnetic fields creating auroras, and most outrageously, rings of debris circling the planet. And at that time, scientists had insisted Jupiter had no rings, none. And 6 years later, in 1979, NASA's Voyager 1 transmitted images showing faint rings of rock and dust exactly where Swann said they'd be. He also mentioned a stronger than expected magnetic field and crystal-like formations in its clouds. And later, measurements confirmed both of these, the magnetic intensity and the ammonia crystal composition of Jupiter's upper atmosphere. How could he have possibly known that? And I have to give the CIA credit because even the scientists at the SRI didn't claim proof that psychic space travel was possible. They simply noted that his description matched unknown data with uncanny precision. And somewhere in the CIA office, somebody probably just laughed and said, well, I guess we're going to fund this another year. After Jupiter, remote viewing gained credibility and resources. By the 1980s, under the codename Stargate, the project was officially part of the Defense Intelligence Agency. Viewers were tasked with real-world missions, describing hidden Soviet bases, relocating missing aircrafts, and even assisting hostage situations. One declassified case involved a submarine base buried under granite in the Arctic. Analysts dismissed this claim until reconnaissance confirmed the structure precisely where the remote viewer said it would be. Another case involved locating a crashed Soviet bomber in Africa. Remote viewers described the terrain accurately enough for U.S. forces to find and retrieve sensitive technology before anyone else. Not every session hit the mark, but overall, the accuracy was high enough that the project survived for more than 20 years across multiple administrations. So I want you to picture it. Soldiers, scientists, and psychics sitting in a secure room sketching submarines while taxpayers thought their money was going on buying tanks, right? And so in 1995, with the Cold War over, the government officially declassified this entire program. Thousands of pages of reports were released to the public. An independent review by the American Institutes for Research concluded that the data was statistically significant but not reliable enough for operational use. So the translation is something weird happens, but we can't really count on it for spy work. Still, the information admitted that some sessions produced high quality and accurate information, which in bureaucratic terms basically means we don't really know how, but sometimes this works. And after declassification, many of the trained viewers went public. So Joe, Lynn, Paul, they began teaching civilians how to do this method. And today, versions of remote viewing still appear in everything from intuitive development courses to cold case consulting. So while Stargate ended, the practice didn't vanish, it just went freelance. So what does this all tell us? First, intuition can be trained because these were not lifelong psychics. They were everyday people who learned to still their minds enough to notice first impressions and to trust the data before judging it. Second, documentation builds confidence. Every session they had was recorded, scored, compared, and that feedback loop is what made progress possible. And third, curiosity is stronger than certainty. No one could fully explain how remote viewing worked, but they kept studying it anyway. And honestly, I feel like that's the real lesson for all of us, is to hold curiosity, not certainty. The mystery is where discovery lives. And so I want us to try it for ourselves here in this podcast episode, a mini Unity code experiment. Grab your notebooks, grab your pen. If you're driving, just settle your mind. And I want you to take a deep breath in and exhale. I want you to rest your body and shake out any nervous energy you might have from the day. And we're going to tune into one psychic location. And this is a place I'm seeing in my mind right now. And I'm going to call this, thanks to my freaking son right now, who's 12. And if you have a 12-year-old, you know, we're going to do target number 67. Okay, 67. So take another breath and move your focus out of your head and down into your heart space. Go ahead, do it. You didn't do it yet. Do it again. I can read the energy. Take a moment and really envision your focus moving from your head down and down and down into your heart space. That's where you access perception beyond logic. And now I want you to set your intention clearly. Say it with me. I intend to connect with target 6-7. Once you imagine your energy gently expanding outward, it will start to connect to the target. Once you feel that link, which might feel like a buzz, a click, you might just start to get information. That's fine too. Imagine that this target is going to send you information. Notice how it comes in. And you might see a quick image in your head, like almost like a memory. You might hear something in your head, like a thought. You might feel it in or on your body, or you might just have a sense of knowing where this is, what's around it. And I just want you to write it all down before your brain has time to think about it. Whatever you perceived. So some questions I'm going to ask you are, where in the world is this? What's the temperature? Is it hot or cold? What does the landscape look like? What colors do you perceive from this? Are there any animals around? What do the animals look like? Do you see streets or do you see meadows? Does it feel high in the atmosphere or low in the water? Don't let my words lead the witness. I'm just asking questions about what you perceive. And so if you need another moment or two, feel free to hit pause on this podcast, on this recording. And when you're ready, here's the reveal. So target 6-7 is Mount Kilimanjaro. It is in northern Tanzania, near the border of Kenya, and it is the highest mountain in Africa. It rises straight up out of open plains, and the base is surrounded by grasslands and trees. Higher up on the mountain, it's rocky and cold, and its top is covered in snow and ice. It's huge, it's quiet, it's peaceful. It's kind of like a place that feels both grounded and outerworldly. If you feel called to, go bring up a picture of this right now. See what it looks like if you can't envision it in your mind. And then I want you to check your notes. Did you pick up on something tall or open or still? Maybe you sensed cool air or saw white or gray or earthly colors. Maybe you felt strength, peace, or some kind of ancient calm. Some people sense movement of animals or rhythms of the wind, and other people might have felt the deep, steady pulse, like the land itself was breathing. And whatever came through, that's your intuition talking, that's data. Now, the key is here, this is the timeout, is that if you perceived it and then your brain, you let it go up to your brain can transform what you perceived, because that's what your brain does. Your brain tries to take these perceptions and turn it into logic. Why? Because our brain is responsible for our survival. Everybody, that's where our ego lives. And so your brain is always, always, always going to be taking what you perceive in initially and taking it and transforming it into something that makes logical sense, because logical sense is the ability for us to survive. When we can make stories and predict and identify patterns, we can predict our own safety and what we are going to need to do to find the next meal, to find the next house, right? To find the next friend, relationship. And so the key with all of this work, psychic work, mediumship, etc., is all about perceiving and receiving it without your logical, conscious brain taking over to interpret and create stories. And so if you naturally found your brain taking over and creating a story or telling you it's not real or telling you that it's not what you perceived, it was something else, I mean, it's totally natural. Don't beat yourself up. But I do want you to maybe practice again later this week and with the second podcast episode that's coming up, and really just focus on that initial impression before your brain can make sense of it. And sometimes it's just a color, and sometimes it's just a sound, and sometimes it's just a feeling, or sometimes it's a flash or a vision, but it's fast and it goes away. That's what I'm talking about. That's your intuition talking. That is the data that they measured in the CIA. And so I want to take this further, and I want to repeat this experiment in our Unity Code community session this week. This will not be a live session because I am traveling this week. I am away on a mediumship retreat as you are hearing this. And so I'm going to be asking you all to respond to the next one that's coming out and let me know what you're feeling or what questions you have. And I'll be happy to answer that later this week on the podcast. But I want us to all tune in together and see if it amplifies what you receive. Does the collective energy make it stronger for you to perceive this psychic remote viewing activity? And we're going to find out. So next episode, bring your notebook, bring your curiosity, maybe a sense of humor, because this is what spiritual science looks like right now. And so as you take a step back and really look at the Stargate program, it is almost unbelievable and hilarious that the CIA actually did pay psychics to describe Jupiter. But beneath the absurdity of this program is something profound. And that's for 2 decades, real scientists explored the boundaries of human perception instead of dismissing them. It was, in essence, the most expensive meditation experiment ever conducted. And it left us with one enduring truth, that human perception is elastic. We can stretch it further than we've been taught. So the next time you get that intuitive nudge, remember, you're not imagining it. You're participating in the same mystery that once held its own government code name. And if anyone questions you, just tell them you're continuing the federally funded research. Thank you so much for exploring the Stargate program with me and the power of remote viewing. And if this episode made you laugh or question or think about a few things that you thought you knew, share it, subscribe, leave a review. That's how our community grows and how more curious souls find their way here. And as always, we will be continuing this conversation in the Unity Code community out there on my website. Sign up because we have chat out there. You can ask questions. I want to hear what your responses are, your reactions. Were you able to tune into Mount Kilimanjaro? What are the results for this upcoming podcast where I'm going to guide you through another remote viewing exercise so you actually learn how to do this, right? And I want to see and compare how you do. And also, as when the next podcast releases, how do we do as a collective when we bring our energy and intention together to focus on the same targets? I'm so fascinated. I can't wait to see what these results are. Until next time, keep your mind open, your energy aligned, and your curiosity tuned in to the frequency of unity. I'm Nicole Pope, and this is the Unity Code.